now recording. We are on air. Good morning, Vietnam.
What's up, Airial?
How are you?
Good. I missed the chance to do my intro, but I'm okay because your intro was so much better. But I am here with the direct, the commanding, the mission-oriented Airial Renal, because today we're talking about our podcasting boot camp, which is kind of cool.
Wait a minute. I didn't know we were using that as the intro. I was just saying some stuff, before you.
It's been a long time since Vietnam got a good morning. I think we should definitely say good morning to Vietnam. Rest in peace, Robin Williams.
Well, welcome to the TrepTECH Podcast. I am your host, Airial, and I'm here with the professional, not upbeat. I don't even know what to say. You always say such good things about me, but I'm here with Scott.
Thanks, Airial. I am professional, though. I'll give you that. Sometimes I when I choose to be, I can be quite professional. So thank you.
Audio genius, audio magician. I need to come up with some things. And that's not because I don't love you. It's just you have this thing about words that you always come up with something.
I know next week is coming and the week after that is coming, and I plan ahead. You got thrown on the spot. You decided to take this one, and I was like, you know what? You can have it. Go for it. Let's see what you have to say.
I screwed it up. Yeah. So you said you wanted to talk about the Podcasting Success Bootcamp.
I do, because I've mostly been a part of the live calls, and I wasn't really a part of the group so much because, again, like I've got a lot on the go, but it was really cool to get in on the calls. And I just wanted to ask you a little bit about how you think it's going and what you're enjoying about it, and just get your views on it, because this is the first one of these you've run, and you plan to run another one in a couple of months. And I really want to know, actually, by the time this episode comes out, you might be on the cusp of the next launch. I want to know what you thought about the last boot camp, the one you're running right now, and kind of get your feel for it and see like who should be jumping into this next iteration. I guess I'd love to know, how did things kick off when you launched this boot camp? How did things initially go?
So are we doing like an actual on-air AAR?
Yeah, I guess it's not quite over yet. So I guess an AAR, an after action review of what's been done so far.
Okay. Well, we launched, what was it, June, back in the end of May, and It began in June, the first week of June, if I remember correctly. And it's been going for 6 weeks. At the time of recording, we are on our 5th week, and tomorrow we will have our final live call. Mm-hmm. The live calls have been amazing. Those are the things I love. And I appreciate you coming to them because, people get to feel our dynamic that we show on the podcast. They get to see it in a different aspect with us coaching with one another. It was a small launch. Anybody who was a current Tech Concierge member, they got in at no cost.
That's cool.
And then I had 2 paid people who
That's kind of a nice... That's a nice value add for your Tech Concierge crew too, though. They're already paying you and you needed beta testers, so you jumped in. And then, if I'm not mistaken, these 2 paid people came from a bundle that you were participating in that we talked about a couple episodes ago. So that's kind of cool.
They purchased, because right now, if you purchase the Podcasting Success Toolkit, you get put into the live rounds for free, for no cost.
Nice.
I think next time I'm going to test out where the toolkit is one price and the boot camp is one price, and see how that goes over. Because I feel like there may have been confusion, because when I launched it, it was kind of almost launching the toolkit and the boot camp at the same time. But because the boot camp was an upcoming live round was imminent, it was like, okay, the boot camp is coming on. So in order to join the boot camp, all you got to do is, buy the toolkit. But the way I worded it, I feel like it may have been confusing.
Can I give you a bit of an idea and you can run with it or not?
Absolutely.
Since the toolkit is ongoing, you buy it once and you have it forever. But the boot camps are sporadic and they might not be a good time for someone to join now, but they don't want to miss it for later and they're going to feel like they got shafted because they missed it. If you're going to run them at individual price points, I think whoever owns the toolkit should get discounted rate of the boot camp. So if you don't necessarily need to own the toolkit to get in the boot camp, you could buy it full price. Fine, come along with us. But if you have the toolkit, you should go on a list and get like, I don't know, 25% off or 50% off or 35% off or 44.7% off. I don't care. One thing I notice is some of the people who are in the boot camp are just getting their toes in and they're not ready necessarily. Whereas if you've had the kit for a while and you've had time to play around and you need help and there's no boot camp available to you, or you were on the first run of the boot camp and you don't get into the second one, that feels like there's a chance for a miss out. But also offering that gift voucher turns them into repeat customers. So they bought the success kit, they had their fun, they hit their first wall, they may have stopped, or they may be struggling, or they may be needing support in your inbox. And so then you're like, okay, I'm going to run another boot camp round. Because you own the toolkit, you get a percentage off if you want to come with us. You don't have to. It's not obligatory. Your name's not getting thrown in the hat just because you own the kit. But if you want a discounted rate off the boot camp, you can tag along with us and get your questions answered.
Okay. That brings in that accountability because they are paying for it.
Right.
So versus just getting thrown in. And if it was shorter, maybe, but it is 6 weeks. So it does take some dedication. It's for those who want to get the shit done. Get it done. They're tired of talking about it and they're ready to be about it.
And that'll help too keep our class sizes small, because as the toolkit consumer list grows, we've got a dozen people who have access to the toolkit right now. Could you imagine throwing those dozen plus the next launch in, and then those dozen plus the next launch plus the next launch in? These class sizes are going to get saturated. This way, you have the toolkit. It's there for you if you want to buy into the live round. It's only the people who are willing to ante up and pay for the Q&As, pay for the work with me sessions, pay for all that, who end up in the class size. So the boot camp is your textbooks. Now, if you want to come to the class, you got to pay the tuition.
Gotcha.
Sorry, the toolkit. The toolkit is the textbook. And if you want to come to the boot camp, there's tuition. Right. If you already own the textbook, you get a percentage off.
That's a very good analogy. That's true. Because the boot camp has a different feel. It's all about podcasting, but some people can take the toolkit and run with it. And it depends on where they are in their journey with podcasting. The boot camp is for those who need help, one-on-one, accountability, that kind of thing. Get it going.
Right. And so that gives us, we're doing a twice a year or quarterly launch. That means we're working with 10, 15, 20, 30 people instead of 300. And so we'll intimate. Yeah, we'll automatically get better results because we're working with smaller class sizes.
Yeah.
It's hard to make sure 300 people launch a show, but it's relatively easy to make sure 15 people do.
Right. And, I like to touch base with people one-on-one and get to know people and what their situation is, what their business is about, why they want to start a podcast, how a podcast can help them. So the smaller the classes, the more I'm able to focus on people as an individual versus just a course meal kind of thing.
Right.
From your perspective, what do you think about the missions, the weekly missions, honestly?
Okay, so I found that those are the live calls, extremely valuable. I loved it. And what I loved most about the live calls is that there were times when only one person showed up and we got to go in on that person for like 2 hours and address everything. And that was wild. But what I found about the missions is that like they were popping up and it was like, hey, do this. Hey, do that. And if we had a longer span than 6 weeks, first week, pick your name and write your description. And of course, buy your mic on the first week. Second week, when your mic comes in, record an intro, get used to your recording software, and et cetera, et cetera. If you span that out over like 12 weeks or 18 weeks, you've got yourself a solid runway to launch a podcast. But over 6 weeks, I found that the missions almost had to be too condensed and people weren't necessarily following along with them. But I don't have your end of it. I only have what I see. So I don't know if people are submitting and succeeding with the missions. But the only thing I found was that if I were the one creating the mission standards, I would keep them simple, bite-sized, and only a week long, and only one focus item at a time, just so that they would, like you're feeding people literally piece by piece. So I think the missions work well over a longer period of time. But I think in 6 weeks, you would have to sit down and really plan out, okay, what are the absolute most effective pieces to challenge people to do?
Okay. So with that being said, do you think we should make the boot camp longer?
I don't know, honestly. I think 6 weeks is good in terms of we've got a digestible amount of calls. And then if anyone needs longer, like they're more than welcome to hire you or hire me as well to walk them through. If the boot camp is not intimate enough, if they get to week 3 and they have to record something and they're scared of the sound of their voice and don't want to turn on the mic, well, that's deeper. I'm sorry, but
Right.
no amount of boot camping is going to get them over that. That's going to be intimate. That's going to be a call one-on-one with one of us, right? So I think
Right.
the 6 weeks is good to get people's feet dipped in, but I think week 1 should be open module 1. Week 2 should be open module 2. Week 3 should be open module 3, and just get people immersed and get them back into the content, back to the toolkit, right?
Yes.
So to
Yeah.
me, that's what it is. And then the Q&As are there for like broad questions, like what should my description say? What should I name my show? But that's kind of how I think the mission should be. I don't think elongating the boot camp is necessarily the right thing, because what that's going to do is it's going to up the price because you've got to pay me for more calls.
Right.
you know, so I mean, we can make it 18 weeks. We can make it fucking one a week for an entire year if you've got the budget for it. I'm cool. I'll take your money all day long. But to keep it cost effective for the clientele, I think 6 weeks is good. It's just got to be a very focused 6 weeks.
Okay, so we will definitely dive into maybe going week by week when we do our personal AAR.
Yeah.
At the very end, I'll get feedback, of course, from the people who are in the boot camp, but also sit down to look at, okay, how to word the missions, what's too much, what to take out, what to rearrange and everything. But I'm glad we launched it. So
Yeah.
one of the things that I've learned is you can try to perfect something and it takes you forever if you ever launch it. And then finally, what I said was we have a vision, we have a mission. We want people to be able to launch their podcast after 6 weeks. We're going to take them through, coach them, give them the basics, and they have a toolkit to expand on everything and go for it. I'm glad we launched, even though it may have been an ugly launch. It may not have been a huge launch like people think of as launch, but I'm glad we did it. And now it's looking back to figure out, okay, how can we improve it?
I will say, like, the amount of people that you got on board is not a small launch. Keep in mind, you're trying to compare yourself to other people's highlight reels. I have been on launches and launch teams and supported people who their first launch was only 20 people or only 10 people or only 5 people. And the ticket attached was relatively high ticket. So 5 people at $5,000 a piece, a lot of people will be a very fucking successful launch. It's only 5 people in the room. That's not hard to get 5 people, right? You've got more than 5 people this time around, but your ticket buy-in is a lot lower than 5K. It's a lot lower than 2K, right? Like, this was a lower ticket price. So you got a bunch of people in, but because it was a bit lower ticket, you're taking that and I don't know if there's any insecurity or self-consciousness there about it, but your launch was a good launch. Trust me. Like, it was solid. It wasn't the prettiest launch. You're right. But I don't find any beta launch is. The first time you launch anything, it sucks. Absolutely sucks. The first time I launched my production services was literally a Facebook fucking post and an email to people. That was it. It was two posts announcing that I had these services available. And a friend of mine posted some stuff in his group, and that was it. Like, it was ugly. And I've done some launches since that are prettier. And to be fair, I've done some launches to this day that are literally just 3 or 4 posts, and that's it, in a couple
Yeah.
of different places. I don't necessarily believe that the mechanics of the launch and have to be pretty. Are they effective? We talked about proof of concept before. You now have a proof of concept. This does work. People do pay for it, and there's enough interest in it that you'll get at least a dozen people in the door. That is a great test base to work from moving toward your next launch.
Okay. A lot of good feedback. And for anybody who's listening, the point is just go ahead and launch it. Whatever you've been sitting on, we don't expect it to be perfect. That's why people do beta launches. They're still creating the content, they're still creating the automations, they're still creating whatever. They're trying to figure out what to leave in, what to take out. That's the whole purpose of beta. And then to get that feedback, that honest feedback for the people who are going through it. just do it, because otherwise you will sit there forever trying to perfect things and never launch. And
Well,
then once you take all of that time and energy to perfect it, by the time you launch it, you're going to probably lose interest or not be as excited about it.
well, like just for example, where are you going to get your testimonials from? We had a bunch of people come through this. We had a bunch of people sit on the live calls. And when they gushed about the boot camp to you, it was like a half an hour testimonial that we could pull a lot of good stuff out of. If it were me launching the next iteration of this, what I would do is I would air this episode, this one specifically that you and I are recording right now about the boot camp. I would then interview 2 or 3 of the participants who are on our live calls and ask them on an episode of this show, because one, it gets them a little exposure to their businesses, but two, people who are listening and who are on the fence get a behind the scenes peek from someone who's been through it on the first round, the ugliest round, of how it went and what they got out of it. So I would air those 2 and then open the cart.
So
Right.
guess what?
What?
So what I plan on doing, instead of, you know how most people launch with a webinar or a challenge or something like that?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to launch with a podcast, a private podcast.
Nice.
So those episodes will be in there, like the interview, like you said.
Put them here. Put them here. Put them here. Put them on TrepTECH. I am not kidding you. The next 2 episodes, I won't be on them. I'll gladly pass the mic to you. You call your clients who took the boot camp and you talk to them about the boot camp and you air it here. Share these out.
Okay, so I'll have to think about if I'm going to air it here and the private podcast, so people know this is specifically for the launch, because it's specific episodes of things I want to touch on for the launch.
Yeah.
But also, yeah, of course, we want it to go to our big audience of the
Because
podcast.
Even Evergreen, if the link in the show notes leads to a wait list after it's closed, great. Someone could catch this 6 months from now when we're not running a boot camp and throw themselves on a wait list.
Right. They can purchase the toolkit.
Right.
And then, get on the wait list. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think the public deserve to hear what people are saying about your programs and services. But I think you deserve the public to hear what people are saying about your programs and services too. And that's why I would say I would launch with this episode we're recording right now, and then 2 testimonial style case study episodes, and then open the cart, bang it out. And then the private podcast could be part of that cart opening too, right? That to me is kind of the way I would go about it. But that's just because again, proof of concept, I've seen it work with a couple of other people I've worked with, and man, does it ever work well. Whenever they're getting ready to open up their big carts for their stuff, they bring on case studies.
Yes.
Right. So I'm going to flat out say that the part of the boot camp I loved the most, I'm kind of surprised, was the work with me session.
That was fun. Oh my gosh. That was amazing.
I was able to just open up my digital audio workspace and take the students through layering their episode together, putting the intro and outro on, mixing it down so there's one file, letting them know why we mix things at certain frequencies, why we mix things at certain levels or sizes, why we use certain quality controls, how to do a noise gate, how to level speech volume so that there's nothing huge, how to take out ums, ahs, clicks, pops, all those imperfections, and then how to save it. That for me was so much fun because I was getting feedback throughout where you were asking questions and the students were asking questions. And at one point, I shared a very specific piece of information about frequency, and watching the students' reactions to like, oh my God, that is so cool. That was really nice because for me, I take it as given knowledge, but someone else following along, they were like, wow, this is incredible. I'm so glad I'm here. And that was super nice to hear.
Thank you so much for that session. That was just, I learned so much. And I could do basic audio editing. No, I don't claim to be a producer by any means, but that whole session was just mind-blowing. I was like, oh my gosh, it was so much fun. I learned so much and was able to appreciate what you and your team do even more.
Yeah, like I've never taken anyone through, because that was basically like a staff training lesson. That's how I train my staff to do what we do. I've never shared our process outside of my staff before that moment. It was really cool to just kind of get out there and be like, okay, you say you want to produce your show. This is what you do.
It was fun seeing how you edit TrepTECH Podcast because you were like, all of these ups and downs, these high peaks, that's Airial because she comes in loud and bubbly.
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's it. Like people might not realize that like when I'm staring at our sound wave, my stuff is super quiet and your stuff is super loud and I've got to make that work. And so how do you make that work? Well, we addressed it in the boot camp. There's so many things that we addressed in the boot camp that I've never seen taught anywhere else.
Nice.
And I personally have never taught them anywhere else. So it's really cool. And then the live calls were another one that I just loved because people were like, what do I name my show? How do I record? What topics do I come up with? What's going to help me sell? Like what topic should I talk about to sell my services? What do I need for mics? What do I say? How do I record? What programs do I use? Like we were able to get in and educate people on such a deep level that there was no question. When their time was up, they were like, yeah, I'm all out of questions. I've gotten everything I need. I'm so glad I can go back and replay this in the toolkit. It was really cool to know that people were getting exactly what they paid for, which was their questions answered, the confidence to proceed. People who were scared of recording were messaging us like 3 days later being like, I recorded my first stuff. And that was super rewarding.
One of my favorite things that I was able to do during the live session was when someone was trying to figure out what to name their podcast and stuff. And you were talking to them while I was over on my other screen Googling and stuff to see if a certain thing that popped in my head was available. And I was like, use this. And then here's your description. And then if you need me to help you create your cover art, then let's go. But that was just so much fun because I was able to do what I love doing, and that's creating brands.
Oh, you had her whole podcast made before we were over that call, like all of the moving pieces, the artwork, the this, the that, like you had bits and pieces and components for everything. And there was so much clarity around it that like anyone who came off that call and didn't have a clear idea of what they were doing, they weren't listening. I loved that because that was just so, because I cover the area I do well, but you were able to come in and fill in all of the blanks that I personally could not be bothered to go in and be like, so this is what your artwork could look like. No, you were already doing that. I Googled your domain. It's available. You were really on the ball with that, like during the call. It was so cool. One of my favorite moments was when I brought up a certain name, and for fun, we'll call her Carol. But I said it was Better Business with Carol, and it abbreviates to BBC. And I was thinking broadcast. I was thinking British Broadcasting Television, and I only thought about it later that BBC can also mean something very different. So she probably should not go with that abbreviation.
Should I ask what the other?
You know what? We're gonna keep it PG. You can Google it. You can Google it if you're curious, but we're gonna keep this PG today. But I was like, she probably should name her podcast that. I'm just as an afterthought. I don't think I would go with that. Those are the fun things that we can do on the call. Is we could just sit down and be like, okay, this is what you want to name your show. This is what you probably want to talk about. If your goal is to get sales, this is what you want to do. But if your goal is just to entertain, you can go this route. It was a lot of fun to really like hash out the details and clarify things for people.
And it was so much fun watching you coach one of our boot campers and helping them figure out the episodes because they were like, well, what am I going to talk about? And as they talked about their business and what they do and what they believe in everything, you were like, here's all your episodes right there.
Yep.
And then they were like, oh. And because some things that come easy to us, that's what people get hung up on. And it's like, just have fun. And I love how you're able to tell them from a sales perspective and give an insight from being a producer of different podcasts and learning what other people do and what works and what doesn't work. And then I have fun coming in with the creative part. These are the colors to use. This is the name to use. It's catchy, but people know what it means. It's not too catchy that it's confusing or diluted, but people know what it means. Here's your description.
What people don't realize is that the line between marketing and sales isn't a defined line. It's very blurry. It's almost like a warm handoff, like it's a hug, not a push. Off you go to sell. It's a hug. Like You are huge on marketing. I am huge on sales. So you
Yep.
do all the branding, you do all the content, you do all the automations, you do all that. And I'm literally sitting here going, that'll sell. That'll sell. Put a link here to a sales page, put a thing there, make sure your show notes say this, have an affiliate link for that, do this, do that. This will all bring in money. And so people don't realize, but the sales are embedded directly into the marketing when we
Yep.
do what we do. So there is no line where you're like, okay, now I'm into the sales funnel. All of a sudden you're on the checkout page and you're like, holy fuck, I've been sold. You know, that's kind of why I like what we do, because we talk about shit on the podcast. People love to hear more. They're really like into it. They know like trust is built. They click on the show notes. Next thing you know, they're on a landing page. And that's where the gentle handoff happened and they don't even realize it.
Yeah.
Right. The landing page is still loaded with marketing. That's where the sale happens too.
And I love how you broke down the episode and explained how we're dropping seeds, how we're seeding the sale, and how we're promoting our offers and talking about what we do and opening that door for new clients, helping clients understand our philosophies, our values, our viewpoints, and everything. We do it on the podcast, but just you breaking that down so other people can understand, that was amazing.
Well, it was fun for me too, because I put a bit of an Easter egg in there where when I chose the episode for the Work With Me session, I chose the episode How to Get Clients. And I edited it for about 11 minutes of audio. And the first 11 minutes of audio was us talking about various strategies and CTAs and things we're offering and all of that. It was our offers, which ultimately is the exact like how you get clients. Like I gave them the example right there. But then I cut it off at so what are we going to be talking about today? Well, what we're going to be talking about today on the show is how you can get more clients. And I was like, okay, I'm done editing.
It was fucking brilliant.
The reason I cut it off there is I want people to come listen to the episode. I don't want them to get all the meat and potatoes right there, right? So they're going to be like, I want to know. I want to know what comes next. They're going to go. Yeah. There's little things like that where you can use little Easter eggs and little references and reference back to different episodes or forward to what's coming next, or talk about paid programs that you ran that were highly successful that you plan to run again in the future and get people waiting for it, get them anticipating it. Like I used a paid program to whet people's appetites for a free podcast episode coming out soon.
Yeah, you did.
I reversed it. I literally took paid people and went, oh yeah, you're hot leads. Here's something free.
Yeah. Yeah. It was beautiful. Because even that also in the episode, you showed us in reality, like how a raw episode sounds and the differences and how you have to balance things. And that happened to be the episode where I think your kids were screaming. My cat was screaming. We had to go to the bathroom. So people got to see like, this is really what happens behind the scenes. And the editing just makes things worth listening to. It's the trick of it all. The magic in it is the editing, the production, because you can take out all the mishaps. You can take out all the you can take out all the in my voices.
Oh, that's going to sound so gross when I edit it. That breath, that intentional loud breath is going to be like 40 times louder when I edit. Thanks. It's like I told our students, right? Podcast Bay Productions, our goal is to make you sound as intelligent as possible, as self-assured as possible, and as well produced as possible. So that means consistent sounding audio, consistent volume audio, consistent quality audio. That means taking out the sentences and stutters that you trip over, your unsure things. Like if you say something in the form of a question, I'm going to take that out because you didn't sound sure of yourself. It means that if you have catchwords like, or basically, or I'm going to take those out because people can hear you stalling. It sounds like you're not intelligent or like you don't know what you're talking about, right? So when we go in, we don't take it in does it sound good? We're like, how intelligent does Airial sound right now? Do I trust her? Do I believe what she's saying? And if I don't, I go back and I edit again. It's one of those things where we approach this from a space of, we want to represent the host well. It's not necessarily about the content or the quality. It's 100% about how are we reflecting this host? How are we putting this host out there? And so that's kind of what I did is I showed people like you can do a lot in editing. You can make a host sound really, really good. And that's going to sell more products because people trust them a lot more.
Yeah. It was fun to just talk about the ins and outs and the behind the scenes and the strategy behind everything. I love strategy. I don't know if you know that, but I do. I love this strategic part of things. It's fun for me, and I love to make it fun. And that's what we covered in the boot camp. This program is so different from others because it wasn't just surface level stuff like record an episode. This is how you post on social media, post 29 million times on social media for the episodes, blah, 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 blah. But it was more like, okay, when we hit record, this is the real shit we go through with everybody screaming bloody murder, us tripping over words. Well, mostly me. One host being super loud, the other one super quiet,
Yeah.
and just laughing and taking out ums and ahs. And the why behind it all, which is to build the credibility and the authority in the host and take that as a piece of marketing and sales material to use in your business. And you can repurpose it over and over again.
And I'm loving what happened in the transformation of the students. For me, that's the biggest one, because the difference for me as to whether or not a launch was successful or not is what came out the other side. I don't care how many people we sold into it. That's good for us, but what came out the other side?
Yeah.
And so for me, like, I'm looking at the boot camp, there were people who were not knowledgeable at all, didn't know what a podcast could do for them or where it would fit in their business or if they even needed one, were afraid of the tech, did not have clarity on the branding, were afraid of recording, didn't think they had anything of value to offer. And now they've got full on plans set. They've recorded their first bits. They're in the process of getting ready to, some of them have expressed like, we're almost at the point where we want to hire you because we're starting to gather our material. Like, these people are becoming podcasters now. And I think that's huge, because when you run a podcasting boot camp, at the end of the day, you want podcasters to come out the other end of it. And that is what's happening. And I think that's the part that excites me the most.
And you say they're podcasters. I think they're business owners who leverage podcasting.
Yes, absolutely. That's a
For
good
marketing
distinction.
and sales. That's how I look at it, because it's not just a podcast just to be having a podcast, because the podcasts have all types of genres, different genres for podcasts. The focus of this is specifically how online business owners can leverage all the possibilities that podcasts bring to the table to help with visibility, reach, building that authority, credibility, know, like, trust factor, getting their message out, and marketing and selling. That's how I approach it. But of course, you're a podcast producer, so you look at them as being podcasters.
No, I think you're right. I think they are business owners who leverage podcasters, because I've seen a lot of podcasters out there who produce a show, put out God knows how many episodes and never make a buck off it, but they've invested so much. These people aren't going to have that same story. They are going to be making money off it because they walked in with that objective in mind and were supported on that mission. It wasn't just, okay, we're going to give you the mechanics of the podcast and you're going to have to figure out how it sells. No, we gave them all of that wrapped in a bow because you and I are business people who happen to have podcasts as well. I believe you're 100% right on that. And I think the bootcamp did a great job in creating people who are actually going to have successful podcasts from a revenue generating standpoint instead of just a vanity metric listenership standpoint.
Right, right. So you talked about the things that you love. What would you change? What are the things that you don't love?
I would just dial in the missions more and make them more stage appropriate, which is hard to do because everyone's at different stages. I would try to make them more stage appropriate for where people are. And outside of that, I think everything else went beautifully.
I had fun with my little mission videos.
I love missions.
So my mission videos were staged like Mission Impossible. This is your mission is to blah, 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 blah. And I had like a English, British voiceover, and it looks like the old style computer typing out and says, this message will self-destruct in 3, 2, 1. I had so much fun creating that stuff because, that's what I geek out on. But I want to make sure that, because gamification is something I really wanted to put into this product, into the boot camp. So we have the leaderboard, contest, the missions, fun stuff to help increase engagement. So gamification was the big thing for me. But I want to make sure that with creating gamification elements that I didn't lose people. that it wasn't too aloof.
I think that'll come to the forefront when you interview your participants, your students, and see how they thought of it. For me, as someone who's created stuff before and have launched and supported, I don't know how many of these types of things, I thought it was really well done. I just think it needed to be dialed in a little more. And the gamification elements are great, but it depends on the personalities, right? If someone's non-competitive, the leaderboard's not going to do a thing for them. If someone's not breadcrumb oriented, they don't give a shit about the missions. Whereas people who are competitive or who are step by step, they're going to love those components. So I think that comes down to just asking the individuals what they thought of it. But personally, for me, I thought it had all of the elements that were required. I just think it needs to be dialed in and honed in a little bit more. And that is the whole point of multiple launches, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your feedback. Was there anything else you wanted to cover? Or you think
Just
that's important to know about the bootcamp?
just that I hope that whoever is listening in, I hope I see you on the next boot camp if you want to get a podcast launched, because that's going to be your opportunity to do it and figure out how it sells. And, the cart's going to be opening for it soon. Airial's going to be launching another boot camp very soon, and I'm going to be there for the calls at the very least. So it would be great to meet some more of you, and it would be great to support you in your podcast launch.
And have fun doing it. This is not your boring 5 million people in that you're only a number. No, we know you as a person. We get to know you, your business, your mission, your values, what you need out of a podcast, what you need when it comes to marketing and sales. And again, have fun doing all of that. I definitely would love to see you in the Podcasting Success Bootcamp as well. And yeah, let's do this.
Let's go.
Deuces.